KMR, Kyle Mohan Racing. We're out here, Lake Erie Speedway, wet weather. We're going to take some time, answer some questions, talk a little bit about our renewable lubricants, Mazda Tricks, KMR RX8. And a little shout out to Brave there, taking up the hood, keeping everybody energized. So, some of the questions that have come in have been how's our fuel system set up and how's our cooling system set up. So this is a big track, and if the weather dries up, it will demand a lot from both of those systems. We could generate a lot of heat and we could consume a lot of fuel. So we're going to talk a little bit about both those systems. Right now we're actually doing a little work to our fuel tank and radium setup. You can see that we run a mid-ship mounted over a centralized rear axle weight, which helps put more pressure on those rear axles, the rear tires, generating more traction. So we try to centralize our weight towards the mid or back of the car, very close to a 50-50 weight balance. The radium system is one of their FCST in-tank setups, and we are very happy with it. It's running 4 individual electronic fuel pumps. 1 pump is our lift pump, and then we have 3 feed pumps. And then the Haltech ECU is actually triggering those 4 fuel pumps at different times. Obviously, our lift pump is running the majority of the time, filling the internal tank. And then the other 3 pumps are triggered as needed. So we're not putting high demand of amperage in an instant moment onto the system. Staggering that fuel delivery allows a smoother amperage draw to the system and smoother fuel delivery as we ramp up boost. Obviously we're running ethanol. I'm a big believer in ethanol. Cool burning, high octane, American made. It's better for the environment, and it's in boosted cars, definitely better for them as well. There's been a lot of data, a lot of testing around that, and the octane gives a lot more knock and detonation protection when you're running high boost. And it doesn't matter, even if you've got massive rails, massive injectors, if you don't have the octane, a cool charge, cool fuel, cool burn, you can end up detonating. And a lot of people wonder how we're able to get reliability out of our 3 rotors, out of our motors. For me, a big key to this whole equation has been consistent fuel delivery. So radium helped us out with that. Consistent high octane that's available, that's cheap, that's easy to get, and that's our ethanol. And then we've got some trick injectors down in here as well. With rotaries, your fuel demand is way up, so especially with the nitrous on top of it. So we're actually running 6 2600 cc injectors. Sorry, I had to think about that for a moment. So very, very cool, and that's allowed us to maintain duty cycle, boost, and reliability. So talking about our cooling system, I think a lot of people mistake this cooling setup up front for a radiator, but within the Formula Drift rules, we're not allowed to hang oil coolers outside of our frame rails. So all of our primary cooling has to be inside the frame rail section of the car, so that's led to the evolution of Formula Drift. This is actually our intercooler, custom made by Sperco. And then twin Mishimoto double pass oil coolers with twin high flow Mishimoto fans. And same thing like our fuel pumps, even though we run a DC power alternator that's high amperage, high voltage, we don't want to shock the system, so our fans are also triggered by the Haltech ECU in a staged fashion as needed to control temperatures. So that's a little bit about the front end. Intercooler, oil coolers, fans, big fuel system. We do run a water injection system as well to help cool the intake charge down. You can see 1 sprayer down there by the turbo into the intercooler, and 1 sprayer on the intercooler outlet as we're going up towards the throttle body. All right, so now where's the radiator? The radiator's in the back of the car. We do have a power steering cooler up front as well. Definitely in drift cars, you want to cool your steering racks. So in the back of the car, we ended up bringing our radiator, you know, towards our axle line. Again, it is aft of the axle line. You run out of room, and obviously you don't want radiator or anything that could be damaged in an impact that's not easily replaceable too far back in the car. So you can see you really get down to just crash support, batteries, and catch cans. And the radiator is actually contained within still the frame rails of the car and the rear window section. Formula Drift has rules also that we have to maintain our window framing and portions of our windows. So you can see with bulkheading, window framing, crash structure application, we have a limited amount of space that we can really put cooling in Formula Drift cars. And we were really lucky in this case. Mishimoto had an off-the-shelf radiator that fit into this application, and I think a lot of people instantly jump to the idea of using something custom, but for us, reliability is always key. Mishimoto, great company, great support here in the US, great products. We're running a 16-inch high flow fan and then one of their 14-inch high flows, both staggered again, so the 16 comes on first, 14 comes on second, and then just some really nice ducting on one of their off-the-shelf, and I hope everybody enjoys this fact, it's actually a diesel truck radiator. Dimensionally, you're just able to hop on their website, look at what they have available, and within the information, all the radiators have dimensions. So we shopped dimensions and found the biggest off-the-shelf radiator we could use, get our hands on. And a nice thing about drifting is if we need another, this is an off-the-shelf radiator. So just that's how we got our cooling done. Now, with Formula Drift cars, I think people go with different ideas. Some people bring air in through the roof, some people bring air in from underneath the car, have air scoops. We ended up doing a Lexan bulkheading and kind of expanding down into our radiator, bringing air down in through the roof. And this has worked out really well. Originally, we did have a scoop, but it didn't seem like the scoop really was a benefit to the whole system. It seems like the car is generating some low pressure here as the air comes over the roof and down what normally would be onto the roof and under the back window. So whether we're sideways or moving forward, we seem to get decent air volume into this cavity and into the ducting and through the radiator. Let me see if I can get a view of it. But our water pump is a Mazda 55 gallon NASCAR pump, and it's tucked down in there also in a safe position. I like running it towards the back, so we're basically moving the water through the radiator and then up through the motor. We've ran it like this for years. It's always worked well. I think a lot of people don't realize how much volume rotaries use for cooling. And as you go into multi-rotors, like 3 rotors and 4 rotors, that volume either needs to be adequate or more than adequate when you start to add more and more boost, more and more horsepower, and more temperature. And always remember, a big portion of the cooling around a rotary is actually the oil. And so even though a lot of people don't consider it, all 3 things are part of your cooling. Ethanol is a cool burning fuel. It's going to bring your intake temperatures down, helps cooling. It's a cool burn, cool charge. Your oil, it's cooling the rotors. They're internally cooled. It is an oil-cooled motor. So your renewable lubricants, your oil of choice, high-quality oil is part of your cooling system in a rotary. And then on top of that, you've still got to keep the water system cool, which is cooling the block, cooling the rotor housings, keeping shrinkage down, keeping the block from warping. So you've got to have a good cooling system, moving water volume through the block and into a radiator that's able to dissipate the heat in whatever amount of time you're able to build that heat. So that's a little bit of information about our fuel system, radium pumps, radium in tank setup, and a little bit of information about our cooling system on the car and how it all actually is intertwined. Your fuel, I run ethanol. Your oil, I run renewable lubricants. And obviously, the water system, I'm running Mishimoto. I hope you enjoyed this little KMR tech talk, a little bit of information about our car out here at Erie. Keep the questions coming, and we're gonna keep putting the videos up. Follow KMR. We're gonna get back to racing. I probably should be helping the team right now, but they let me do videos.